This hearing will come to order. This hearing is virtual, and we're going to address a few housekeeping matters. For today's meeting, the chair or the staff designated by the chair, for me, it will be Mr. Ryan, may mute participants' microphones not under recognition or for purpose of eliminating background noise. Members are responsible for muting and unmuting themselves. If I notice that you have not unmuted yourself, I will ask you if you would like staff to unmute you. If you indicate approval by nodding, staff will unmute your microphone. I remind all members and witnesses that the 5-minute clock still applies, and you'll see the 5-minute clock in the screen. If there's a technology issue, we will move to the next member until the issue is resolved, and you will retain the balance of your time. At 1 minute remaining, the clock will turn yellow. 36 remaining, I will gently tap the gavel to remind members that their time has almost expired. When your time has expired, the clock will turn red, and I will begin to recognize the next member. In terms of the speaking order, we're going to follow the order set forth in House rules, beginning with the chair and the ranking member. Then members present at the time the hearing is called to order will be recognized in their order of seniority. And finally, members not present at the time the hearing is called to order. Finally, House rules require me to remind you that we have set up an email address to which members can send anything they wish to submit in writing for any of our hearings or markups. The email address has been provided to your staff. With that, before I introduce the guests, we're going to have votes at 2:30. Our speakers are aware of that. Mr. Ryan and I will be exchanging virtually the gavel. So when I'm not present, Mr. Ryan will have the gavel and will recognize people, and Ken will have his, the ranking member, Mr. Calvert, will have his designee. This afternoon, this committee will receive testimony on current and future needs for the Department of Defense workforce for both military and civilian and the defense industrial base. This will be a 2-panel hearing. We will hear from Mr. Vonnevillen, lecturer from MIT and co-author of Workforce Education and a New Roadmap. From Dr. Griffiths, the current president of Dakota State. I always want to say North Dakota because my mother was from North Dakota, so forgive me. From Dakota State University, and former commissioner from the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. Mr. Beal, Vice President for the Trades at Newport News Shipbuilding, a division of Huntington Ingalls Industry. And General Carlisle, President and CEO of the National Defense Industrial Association, will provide us with a small business perspective. The second panel, we will recognize government experts from the Department of Defense. We will hear from Undersecretary Cisneros, Head of Personnel and Readiness in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, Undersecretary Ortiz-Jones from the Department of the Air Force, Mr. Lohman, Senior Official performing the duties of Undersecretary for the Department of the Army, and Ms. Berger, the Senior Official performing the duties of Undersecretary for the Department of Navy. I really strongly encourage members to stay on for both panels, and when going over to voting and coming back and forth, you can put your earbud in and log on through your phone so you don't miss a thing. So here we go. Over the past few years, several studies and reports have expressed significant concern about the ability for our workforce to meet the current and future workforce gaps in skilled trades, engineering, and emerging technologies throughout the defense sector. This challenge has been particular interest of mine as chair, and the committee report for fiscal 2022 includes several reporting requirements from the department on this issue. This hearing serves as a follow-on to our report, and I hope it will be a genuine opportunity to start a dialogue on the issues we face in the defense workforce. This hearing will explore such questions as: what type of DoD civilian and military education and workforce development programs are in place to address the current and future workforce gaps? How does the department coordinate academic and workforce development programs across the service? And what programs are in place to fill the demand careers in the Department of Service, the services, and the industry, particularly to meet the challenge of emerging technology? things like artificial intelligence, hypersonics, and cyber. We are addressing current workforce gaps in the skill trades right now, engineering and emerging technologies to ensure that we have enough people trained for those jobs. What will the Department of Defense need to do, not only to recruit individuals for these jobs, but also incentive packages that are required to retain them? How do workforce gaps impact the defense industry, both large and small businesses, and the supply chain in the defense sector? How do these gaps impact the industry's ability to create, maintain, and sustain new technologies? We could go on with more, but these are just a few of the questions I hope and I know will be addressed in part today. Our first panel of outside witnesses will provide us with their perspective on a broad scope of current and future defense force gaps and how the department is acting to address this challenge and what they think the department could do better. As a former teacher, I'm keenly interested to hear how the public and private education sectors are doing, ranging from kindergarten through post-secondary. Are they poised to meet our future workforce demands? And I want to hear how the department and industry can collaborate to support underrepresented minority, veterans, nonprofits, and small business communities on workforce issues. And then finally, our second panel of government witnesses, they will share their perspective on the same topics and how they view the challenges of the current and future defense force work gaps, what actions DoD is taking to address these needs. The committee is also interested in how the department conveys these challenges in priorities, such as modernization priorities, to the services, while also ensuring that those new priorities are incorporated into civilian and military education and workforce development programs. And in turn, how the services incorporate those modernization practices into their structures and effectively execute them. Now, I know there's a lot to cover, and this is an issue that's vitally important to all of us. It not only affects the military, but it affects many small businesses in each and every one of our states. So with that, I want to recognize my ranking member, Mr. Calvert, for his opening remarks, and a person who's been very concerned about the health of small business and the Department of Defense reaching out to make sure that they're included. Mr. Calvert.
Thank you, Chair McCollum. First, I'd like to thank the witnesses on both panels for appearing before us today. You all represent government, academia, and industry leaders, a partnership that will need to be strengthened to ensure a workforce that is ready to take on the challenges of both today and tomorrow. Since the Second World War, the ingenuity of our industrial partners and its highly trained, capable workforce has been the driving force in America's quantitative military edge. Today, as our nation relies heavily on a workforce both in the government and in the private sector that can execute the requirements set by policymakers. However, we are living in an era of rapid technological change, emerging threats in new domains, and the growth of near-peer adversaries, which require a complete and coordinated response. We cannot win the wars of the future with the workforce of the past. Furthermore, the realities of the past year and a half have shown both how fragile and resilient this workforce can be. COVID-19 has confronted both the government and industry with challenges previously unthinkable. I'd like to thank all of you for your flexibility, persistence, and commitment to our national security during this difficult time in our nation's history. Today, I'm interested in hearing from our witnesses about a range of topics, including how we integrate new technologies like artificial intelligence into our processes. How can we properly train the next generation of our workforce? What Congress can do better to assist the DoD's industrial partners, and how we can ensure bureaucracy does not needlessly hinder rapid development. I also am interested in hearing from our service civilian leadership about how we can manage and right-size our growing civilian workforce without losing capability. As I've said to the subcommittee many times before, I'm greatly concerned about the cost of maintaining a needlessly large civilian workforce, particularly as budget uncertainty will remain a reality in years to come. If we're going to truly prioritize the DoD's resources to focus on great power competition, proper management of the civilian workforce must be part of that conversation. Again, I thank the chair for her focus on all these important issues and for the witnesses appearing for us today. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you. So let's get right to it. Our first witness for the panel is Mr. William Bonvillain. Welcome. Please proceed with your testimony for 5 minutes.
Chair McCollum, Ranking Member Calvert, members of the subcommittee, I want to thank you for the opportunity to meet with you today. I've been asked to address 3 of the list of issues that you all went through, kind of overall problems facing the American workforce education, some of the possible solutions, and to focus on the defense workforce education within that kind of overall context. So broadly speaking, our economy has low productivity, which affects our economic growth and therefore our financial well-being. There are 2 inputs for improving productivity: technological advance and a more skilled workforce. Now, historically, U.S. firms and policies have favored the first and tended to neglect the second. So U.S. education and training are lagging behind the available technology, which hinders our ability to adopt the new technology that we need. So now is a time to improve that workforce input. This is a message that applies to DoD as well. As you all have pointed out, if DoD wants its modernization agenda, it needs a stronger industrial base, and that means workforce development has got to be a key input on DoD's agenda. So what are the big challenges that we face in this workforce education area? We don't really have a system for workforce development, and we need one. We've got a disconnect between work and learning. School on one side, work on the other, with few pathways between the two. We've got, disinvestment historically by government and employers. We've got few federal programs that reach the higher technical skills and incumbent workers. And our workforce programs are not well lit or complementary. We dismantled much of vocational education starting in the 70s. Our community colleges are underfunded, and their student completion rates are too low. Colleges and universities are disconnected from workforce education, so lifelong learning is missing. We've got underfunded advanced technical education programs. We've got a broken labor market information system, and all of this takes place within what we could call legacy sectors, which means change is hard to undertake. So against this backdrop of issues, the U.S. has got a quality job problem. Technological advances, especially in information technologies, are putting too many quality jobs out of reach for workers who didn't get the proper skills and training. So upskilling is ongoing, with jobs increasingly going to those who got the right skills in training. But we've got millions of stranded jobs that we just aren't filling. So we need a new system, frankly. If you ask Americans what high school and college are, they know. But if you ask them, what is the American workforce education system? You're going to get a blank stare. And we need to build this system. And by building it up, we'll open new opportunities. But we can't just do more of the same and expect change. We are starting to see new changes coming about in workforce education that we could take advantage of. New education technologies, including online applications and VR, virtual reality and augmented reality, gaming, digital tutors. Those are starting to come on. Short courses that take weeks and months, not years, that better fit student schedules. Community college programs that reach not just community college students, but also incumbent workers and high school students. We need apprenticeships. We need to raise community college completion rates. We need technical and comprehensive high school programs with workforce elements built into them. We need an expanded employer role, new curricula in advanced fields, and a new labor market information system. In the defense workforce, how do these overall recommendations tie into the Defense Department and its needs? So DoD, as you all know well, has massive workforce education needs. It has to train service personnel departing service members and veterans so that they have opportunities when they leave the military, its own industrial base workforce of 88,000 at depots, arsenals, shipyards. And there are tens of thousands of defense contracting firms where workers need upgraded skills. I want to focus on the last three, and jobs in manufacturing are a particular focus for these three groups. Advanced manufacturing, a big challenge for DoD. The U.S. has been ceding major parts of its manufacturing base to foreign competitors. It's been falling behind in new manufacturing technologies. This is a major problem for DoD, given its need for secure and reliable supply chains. But we won't get to these new manufacturing technologies unless we've got a workforce ready to implement them. DoD has got a series of assets on these workforce education issues. And I won't try to eliminate them here with Q&A, but as I mentioned, four critical ones. It's advanced institutes through Mantech, its industrial base analysis and sustainment IBAS programs, the service training and development centers in Orlando, and the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation are all key assets that we can deploy in these workforce issues. In conclusion, we've got a workforce education system that isn't working well as a system, and it really needs reform. And DoD's got a big stake in strengthening our industrial base and therefore in strengthening our workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we've asked you to cover a lot in 5 minutes. Thank you so much. Dr. Griffiths, please go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you, Chairwoman McCollum, Ranking Member Calvert, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. As a former commissioner of the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence, I led the line of effort charged with examining the implications of AI and associated technologies for the U.S. national security and defense workforce and making recommendations for government action and reform. I should also note that I'm here speaking in my personal capacity as the Commission sunset on October the 1st, 2021, per our congressional mandate. The US still leads the world in AI, but our lead is rapidly shrinking and China is catching up. China moved in 2016 when 250 million Chinese citizens saw the AI program AlphaGo defeat the best Go player in the world. This moment provoked policymakers in China to swiftly organize and dedicate enormous resources towards AI and the global technology competition. In March this year, we delivered our final report to Congress and the President. This gives Congress a clear blueprint for how to stay ahead. Before I speak to the NSCAI's recommendations focused on talent and workforce, I'd like to provide you with a high-level overview of our main conclusions and recommendations. We reached a few overarching judgments. First, the government is not organized or resourced to win the technology competition against a committed competitor, nor is it prepared to defend against AI-enabled threats. And second, the nation must be AI ready by 2025 to defend and compete in the coming era of AI accelerated competition and conflict. 4 priority areas for government action. First, leadership. We need organizational structures that accelerate the government's integration of AI and its promotion of AI across the country. This should include a Technology Competitiveness Council at the White House. Second, talent. We have a huge talent deficit in government, and we need to cultivate AI talent nationwide and ensure that the world's best technologists come and stay in the United States. Third is hardware. We are too dependent on semiconductor manufacturing in East Asia and Taiwan in particular. Most cutting-edge chips are produced at a single plant separated by just 110 miles of water from our principal strategic competitor. We must revitalize US cutting-edge semiconductor fabrication capabilities and implement a national microelectronics strategy. And the goal should be to stay 2 generations ahead of China in state-of-the-art microelectronics. And the 4th area is innovation. AI research will be very expensive. We need the government to help set the conditions for broad-based innovation across the country. This should include a national AI research infrastructure, and we should reach $40 billion in annual research funding for the next 5 years to cover AI R&D for defense and non-defense research. However, talent is the centerpiece of any winning AI strategy, and incremental change will just not be enough. The military needs expertise both in and out of uniform, or it will be unable to build the systems or perform the tasks described in our report. And the DoD is unlikely to develop that expertise quickly enough on its own. And as a result, if the DoD is going to be AI ready by 2025, as we've recommended, congressional action will be needed. Allow me to briefly describe 4 high priority recommendations in the report. First, and most critical for the AI workforce, is the need for military and civilian career fields in software development, data science, and artificial intelligence. The inability of our military digital subject matter experts to spend their careers working in digital fields is arguably the single most important issue impeding modernization. Without these career paths, DoD will continue to struggle to recruit new talent, identify talent, and retain its current talent. Our second priority is training junior leaders. We recommend the military services incorporate AI topics into pre-commissioning and entry-level training for junior officers and training for both junior and senior non-commissioned officers. Our third priority is to incentivize emerging technology literacy among senior officers. Using the Goldwater-Nichols Act incentivization of joint competency as a model, Congress should require DoD to create an emerging technology certification process and critical billets. And service members would earn their certification by serving in non-critical emerging technology billets, fellowships with industry and academia, graduating certified courses, and earning commercial certifications. And finally, we have made 2 significant proposals in addition to the reforms. 1, build the U.S. Digital Service Academy. The U.S. government should create the U.S. DSA, an accredited degree-granting university that produces technically educated graduates with a service obligation as civil servants. And 2, establish a National Reserve Digital Corps. Many of the most talented technologists in the U.S. are eager to serve their country, but unlikely to become full-time government employees or military reservists. The government needs a mechanism to tap this talent reservoir. So the government should establish the NRDC modeled after the military reserves that allows civilians to work for government 38 days a year as advisors, instructors, and developers. And let me close by saying that just as AI is poised to impact all sectors of society, it's also poised to impact all dimensions of national security. So I urge you and your colleagues in Congress to review the full range of our national security problems addressed in the report and adopt recommendations to address them. Thank you again for the opportunity to appear.
Thank you. Mr. Beal.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman McCollum, Ranking Member Calvert, and members of the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. Again, my name is Xavier Beal, the Vice President of Trades at Newport News Shipbuilding, an operating division of Huntington Ingalls Industries. And it is my honor to represent the shipyard here today to discuss our approach to workforce development, challenges in the future, and provide some recommendations for committee consideration. In my role, I have a responsibility to provide and prepare a capable production and maintenance workforce to perform the critical work we do in support of our United States Navy. Equally important, I represent the interests of thousands of our nation's skilled craftswomen and craftsmen. In 1991, I started my shipbuilding career as a pipe fitter. I've also worked on behalf of our fellow shipbuilders within our Human Resources Division, with an aim to ensure all shipbuilders and future shipbuilders have the opportunity to learn, grow, and reach their full potential. I understand that Chairwoman McCollum and several subcommittee members recently visited Naval Base Kitsap and Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. Your experience at the public naval shipyards is similar to what you would see here at Newport News Shipbuilding. Both private and public shipyards have similar needs and face similar challenges, and I invite you to visit us when you have time. Huntington Ingalls consists of 3 operating divisions: Newport News Shipbuilding, Ingalls Shipbuilding, and our Technical Solutions Division. All 3 divisions of our company face similar challenges in the attraction, development, and deployment of their respective workforces. At Newport News Shipbuilding, we are building the new Ford-class aircraft carriers and Virginia-class fast attack submarines and performing refueling and complex overhaul on Nimitz-class aircraft carriers. At 25,000 strong, we're the largest industrial employer in Virginia. We partner with over 2,500 supplier businesses from across all 50 states, so our impact to the economy is much greater than just Newport News, Virginia, and the Hampton Roads region. Our Integrated Digital Shipbuilding Initiative, or IDS as we call it, is the future of shipbuilding. EventID is the future USS Enterprise, which delivers to the Navy in 2028, will be the first Ford-class aircraft carrier completely built in a digital environment. We believe there is a role for federal investment in IDS, given its potential across the nuclear shipbuilding enterprise, from new design and construction in the private shipyards in our supplier base all the way through the ship's operation and maintenance life cycle, overseen by the Navy and public shipyards. While the digital transformation is good news, we face significant challenges in terms of hiring skilled workforce. We understand the need to build a workforce pipeline that will help sustain our business for future decades, and we believe in starting early. So we partner with our area schools to expose students, parents, to our students and parents to our business for future decades, and we believe in starting early. So we partner with our area schools to expose students, parents, and teachers to our company and the opportunities that shipbuilding career offers. We're also looking at ways to use regional training centers to develop our future workforce. They are most cost effective as they can serve multiple age groups and draw from the entire region. They can standardize curricula around employer needs and create clear pathways from high school to community college to employment within their specific region. Thanks to the support from the Department of Defense's Industrial Base and Sustainment, which we call our IBAS office, the Institute for Advanced Learning and Research in Danville, Virginia, has recently piloted an accelerated training and defense manufacturing program to help the defense industrial base leverage its training infrastructure. Newport News Shipbuilding provided curriculum development support and will have participants in the program's pilot cohort. We believe there's potential for the same synergy in Hampton Roads, where we have several strong organizations seeking to address the region's workforce development. There's no doubt major hurdles exist to building the maritime workforce that our shipyard and our maritime industrial base will need to ensure long-term success. These hurdles are not insurmountable, but industry and individual businesses cannot do it alone. With that in mind, here are some ideas on how you can help us be more successful. Have the Navy work to develop standard pre-hire curriculum and certificates that can be adopted within all Navy communities. The more centralized curriculum development can be done by the customer, the easier and more efficient it will be for everyone. Over the past few years, the Department of Defense's Industrial Base Analysis Sustainment Office has been the major source of workforce development investment, and expanding across these funds will support the entire shipbuilding industrial base. So in conclusion, there's a great need for increased investment in federal workforce development to support the overall growth of shipbuilding talent. With your help and the partnership of other local, state, and federal allies, the defense industrial base will prosper and be in a better position to provide the support our Navy needs and our nation deserves. I thank the committee for their time and look forward to your questions.
Thank you. General Carlisle.
Chairwoman McCollum, Ranking Member Calvert, and distinguished members of the committee, I want to thank you for the opportunity to share my experiences and an industry perspective on the challenges facing the future of the defense workforce. Providing America's national security faces challenges, including a critical shortage, has been mentioned, of skilled, educated, and cleared personnel to work in the defense ecosystem. Many factors are causing the widening gaps in our workforce with which we must contend. Without comprehensive investments in all of our nation's human capital, we won't be able to fill these gaps, much less ramp up expeditiously in times of national need. The defense sector mirrors the workforce challenges faced by the greater organic industrial base. Unmet demand for STEM talent, increasing shortages in skilled personnel who can build the systems we need to stay competitive, uneven access for all of America's talent pools, and the evolving work environment the COVID crisis has only accelerated. As a trade association, the National Defense Industrial Association represents the interests of defense companies of all sizes and sectors, with the majority of our membership comprised of small business. Adverse impacts to small business are felt throughout the supply chain. As these companies seek to transition ideas to capabilities, they face a marketplace where demand is outstripping the supply of STEM talent. Coupled with the competition for new talent, companies cannot afford to lose talented, highly skilled employees, which is their most coveted asset, to other sectors and in today's world to retirement. On the vocational side, we have spent decades as a society selling a four-year degree as the ultimate path to opportunities and career success. While true, this is a great path, it is not the lone path. The push for college for all has had the unintended consequences of messaging that skilled careers are somehow second class. That could not be farther from the truth. For many, with the talent and desire, noble, skilled careers can be both lucrative and fulfilling. Unique to our sector is the often required security clearance. The security clearance process can be a high and sometimes impossible hurdle to clear for many qualified candidates. This barrier is particularly detrimental for small companies who find it difficult to find the right talent, and they can ill afford to pay them while they're waiting oftentimes months to get them cleared to work on a classified contract. This prevents many small businesses from entering and remaining part of the defense ecosystem. We believe that being part of a solution to the defense workforce challenges is fundamental to NDIA's mission and what we exist for. As such, we've established a multi-year defense workforce project known as DWP, and we'll hold our first initial Defense Workforce Summit this December. As our vital signs report shows, there is a need for diversity within the defense sector. This is not just diversity of race and gender, but also of diversity of thought. To increase the propensity to enter the defense sector, we need to ensure more people see themselves as part of the national security enterprise. We also need to recognize the existing talent pool of veterans and military spouses who have familiarity with the defense mission and make entrance for their career pathway a more streamlined process. Educational opportunities are crucial to supporting our workforce today and into the future. We must address the imbalance in representation in the STEM workforce and increase the number of academically prepared students at the K-14 level in STEM. An area too often overlooked is the career and technical education known as CTE. And we do not see many substantive national approaches to this problem. We in NDIA are identifying centers of training excellence and developing actionable recommendations on adapting and scaling programs nationally to meet the production goals for the next 5 to 20 years. Finally, experience before and since the COVID crisis began have shown the nature of work is shifting. We need to understand the current trends and the change to implement the changes that we need to develop the workforce of tomorrow. A partnership between government and industry is necessary for generational impacts to ensure the future of the workforce. Collaboration is underway in these very halls, Congress, with the establishment of the House Defense Workforce Innovation and Industry Congress, and it's established with support from both sides of the aisle. Our focus is to help ensure the defense industrial base has a robust, ready, and clear defense workforce for 2040 and beyond, capable of equipping our nation's warfighters to face both impending and unforeseen challenges. Improving the development of the defense workforce is a work in progress, and frankly, we don't know yet how much or what the appropriations are necessary to fund these projects. We do know that there is funding required, and we really look forward to working with you, all of you in Congress, and we thank you for advancing and recognizing this issue and for your continued support. Thank you.
Well, thank you. You all covered a lot. There's a lot to cover. Mr. Ryan, I am going to go vote. I'm turning the virtual gavel over to you, and you can have the first question.
Thank you, Chairwoman McCollum. Let me just first say how impressive this panel is, and I think my district is in Ohio, and Northeast Ohio, and this has been an issue across the board. Obviously, not just in defense, not just in the defense industrial base, but workforce, obviously. But you touched upon issues with semiconductors and manufacturing and lack of a grand strategy in the country and all the rest. So I really appreciate all of your contributions here. So let me ask a couple questions here, because defense corporations really of all sizes share the challenges that you mentioned, but underpinning each large corporation are these smaller businesses, and their challenges are often more extreme. And the department houses a small business office within the Office of Industrial Policy that manages its outreach to the smaller businesses. And from their statistics, it appears that in 2020, 24.5%, or about $80 billion worth of business was executed by small businesses. But For small businesses to continue to achieve success, they need to train their personnel, and training programs are difficult for them to execute. So, General Carlisle, the National Defense Industrial Association, can provide us a comprehensive overview of these challenges with a particular emphasis on small businesses. Could you please share with us the unique challenges that small businesses face in attracting and retaining personnel for their skilled career fields?
Yes, sir, Representative Ryan, I appreciate the question, and you're right, it's critical. I think small businesses have a couple of added challenges that large business don't. One of them is the challenge of the speed with which the departments sometimes work. It's called the Valley of Death. You can call it a bunch of different things, but the time it takes sometimes to go from, hey, this is a great idea, this is great technology, we have the technology and the workers to get it done, to then being able to put it on contract and start producing it, that can extend time, whether it's a SBIRS contract as it goes from phase 1 through phase 3 and then try to become a program of record. Well, larger businesses have ways that they can deal with that. They can, move people around, they can use them in other places. Small businesses, if you have a workforce, many of our members will have to mortgage their house to pay the wages for their workers while they're waiting for their contract to come to fruition. So that time lag is a huge challenge for small businesses. And then the other one is the cleared part of it, the one that I mentioned in my opening statements, and that is security clearances because many of the programs are classified contracts. Security, it's gotten better, but it's got a long ways to go. It still takes months to get somebody cleared. And if you can start that ahead of time, it works out better. Internships, I think, are one way to start it. There's a couple of ideas on kind of starting them even in academic institutions at colleges. If you have people that are inclined to go towards the defense industry, start their clearance process there. But those are two big problems that I think face small business. And then, of course, the competition for the workforce in the commercial sector is just daunting to small business in the defense and industrial base.
What areas, General? What areas have the biggest gap?
I would say I think there's
demand and for the worker and the capability or the skill set of the workforce.
Yes, sir. I think software engineering is one that's a big player for small business in particular. There's a lot of that out there, but the competition for really high quality coders is a big challenge for them. Another one is the skilled trades. I mean, you know that the skilled, the welders, the electricians, the pipe fitters, there's a shortage of those, and obviously the competition for those is intense. So, and then I think, as mentioned by Chairwoman McCollum, is the new technology, whether it's hypersonics or AI or machine learning, that just adds to the demand signal for small business.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. How do you solve the skilled trade issue? I know that's an issue.
So there's some folks.
I know we got helmets to hard hats, and we've got some of these other creative programs. Is there any? You have any ideas on how we could maybe close that gap a little bit with the skilled trades?
Sir, I think there's a couple. I think one of them would be to take advantage of military veterans and spouses, family members of military veterans, because they often have skills in those areas that they've learned either in the military or moving around with the military. So that's one place. There's a thing called Skill Bridge. I think that generally goes to more white collar work. I think Skill Bridge in some of the skilled trades is another place where you could, folks depart in the Navy in the Hampton Roads area would probably be great for Newport News Shipbuilding, and they often very skilled, very talented. My brother is from San Diego, senior chief in the Navy for 26 years, and went to work in a skilled trade and stayed in San Diego. And that transition took longer than it should have because he already had all the talent. So I think that's another place that we could do it.
Got it. Real quick before I kick it to Ranking Member Calvert, the Defense Workforce Project in the initiative's current efforts to address these common workforce challenges facing the industry today. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, sir. Thanks for the question. So the Defense Workforce Project's been going on for months. We have 4 working groups with expertise from around the country, and they're looking at those 4 different areas. They're looking at the skilled workforce, the CTE. How do we get those welders and shipbuilders and pipe fitters and electricians and plumbers. That's one of the work groups. Another one is STEM. How do you get better STEM education? We have a lot of academic input on that. And how do we get it going back K to 12 or K to 14? You know, we have a tendency to go to just college. You actually have to start at much further left of that. We have another one on diversity. How do we get to all the talent pools in this country? Oftentimes there's sections of this country don't understand those opportunities are out there. So how do you get to more of them, get more capability? Because we do have an incredibly talented population. And then the final one, obviously, is the world's changing. It's a different work environment. There's automation. There's what COVID did. There's all those things that the work of the future is going to probably look a little bit different than it has in the past. And how do we transition to that? And our first summit is December 9th. And we'll start working on the laying the groundwork for recommendations and ways to come forward in what we can do to support the challenge of the workforce.
Great. Well, I just want to be clear too, when you said further left, you meant earlier in high school and into, I want to make sure Mr. Calvert's okay. I don't want him to be upset, you know, about the comment. Ranking Member Calvert.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate your recognizing me. I think that maybe it's an interesting conversation about, you know, the lack of vocational education in America today. We used to have much more of that. I think it was given a dirty word, unfortunately. There's a program, I'm sure it's shared in other states in California, where we take 2 years of high school and 2 years of community college for a trade, for instance, you know, fixing air conditioners or be a mechanic or software, you know, just a number of trades. And we're seeming to getting back to that. Maybe this is for the entire panel. Is that something we should work toward in the Department of Defense to encourage that kind of outreach, both at high school and community college level? Generally, maybe you can start with that.
Yes, sir. I'd be more than happy to. I think that's an incredible idea. You know, there's different kinds of talent throughout our population. And I mentioned my brother earlier. My brother mechanically can fix, make, or build anything. He just has a three-dimensional mind. And there's kids like that. But when I went to high school, there was auto hobby shop and wood shop. Those don't exist anymore in high school. But those are things that I think, you know, if we start.
We're the same age.
Say again, sir?
We're the same age.
Yes, sir. San Diego, California, too. So that's where I'm from. But so I think that the idea of identifying that talent, which you can identify early, and folks that have a propensity and want and look forward to getting into that, you know, a lot of people just love working with their hands. And I think that's a great idea.
Sure. And by the way, you can also create, in many instances in these programs with high school and community college, an apprentice program where they can actually earn some money at the same time and learn the process. For instance, welding, being an assistant welder, you know, learn how to do that. And by the time they get their 2-year degree, they're making $75,000 to $100,000 a year, which is not bad. Dr. Griffin, the Senate recently appropriated a bill 22, includes $100 million to enhance department's recruitment and retention of AI literate acquisition workforce. And I think that AI needs to be rapidly developed and integrated into the workforce, especially if we're going to maintain our superiority over threats like China. Could you speak to how these funds can be utilized in the department, and should the funding be included in the conference agreement? For Dr. Griffin.
There's always somebody who forgets to switch it on, and I apologize for that. Thank you. Yes, there are a tremendous number of needs for recruiting the AI talent in the Department of Defense. I believe that the funding should be spent in a number of areas. We have both the recruitment of new talent and the identification and education and training of a talent that already exists within the DoD. The problem with the government, the military and civilian, is we're not fully aware of what digital talent already exists. So that there are a number of different ways in which that money could be developed. and fed into programs, including creating digital core within every branch of the service and within every branch of government, so that you organize the workforce so that people can come in and be deployed depending on the talent that they already have, the existing talent. The second would in fact be those career fields, because right now you simply cannot move forward within the federal government to pursue your career along those lines, particularly in the military, like the medical corps. What we've recommended is a digital corps like the medical corps, where you can pursue your entire career in the digital field that you have capabilities in. And then we also have recommended, as I mentioned, the National Digital Reserve Corps and the U.S. Digital Service Academy for really expanding efforts to bring talented people into the government. We believe that the National Digital Reserve Corps would be very effective in allowing people in business and industry and academia to provide some resources to the government for periods of time. We believe that we've talked to many different people in industry and in academia who are very, very willing to serve the government, just not necessarily on a full-time basis. But what they are challenged by are the kinds of challenges that the government faces and the nation faces as a whole. So attracting people who are attracted to that kind of challenge would actually expand the workforce at a time when it's going to be very, very hard to build the sufficient capacity that we need in the short period of time. After all, we're 5 years behind China right now, and we have a deficit to make up. So we need to move pretty quickly.
That I would agree with. I hope we're not 5 years behind China, but that's what people say. And retention is a problem.
Yep.
Obviously in the government, because there's such demand in the private sector for those who receive that education. So we have to keep up with pay and benefits to maintain that workforce. And we mentioned the shipyards. I know was over at a shipyard recently, this weird competition for those who are in the government to those that are working in the shipyard. So it's right there in the facilities themselves. Mr. Beal, you're aware that Navy's failed to deliver a long-term shipbuilding plan to Congress. What impact does it have on your workforce when you're unable to adequately rely on a stable shipbuilding plan that we don't have here in our budget? I'd like to answer that question, Mr. Beal.
Yeah, thanks for that question, sir. It has a significant impact on our ability to plan and really get out there and start working with the pipelines to develop the labor resources that we need to go and execute on these programs. I'll go back a second though, because that lack of having that solidified plan there impedes our ability to address some of the things that were spoken about earlier with respect to moving our engagement efforts to the left. Right now is the time for us to be engaging with our shipbuilders that we need in 5 years. We should be engaging with them in middle school and in high school through those pipeline programs to start introducing them to the skilled trades, allowing them to start to work and perfect on those skills so that when they actually enter the workforce, that those individuals are adding value from day one, and we're not spending significant time once they come into the company to train them. So
well, I agree. We need to move quickly to counter the Chinese aggression in the Pacific. We need more ships, quite frankly. And your comment on the workforce constraints that you're experiencing, and what our private shipyards need in order to keep pace with China. We should, we're going to put a lot of people to work. We can start building a lot of ships. These are good jobs. We should be up to 2 ships a month, like China's right now is developing 24 to 30 capable warships per year. And so that's a very difficult situation. With that, Mr. Ryan, I'll be happy to yield back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Calvert. Next is Mr. Rupersberger.
And Mr. Ryan, I'm back if you want to go vote.
Okay, thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you.
I'm going to go vote too.
appears looking at my screen that Mr. Cuellar is not here, Mr. Rupesberger is not here, so that would go to Ms. Capter.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. What an excellent hearing. My fundamental question to all the witnesses as they've listened to one another, I would like to know which ideas float to the top. Many of you, as I've read your testimony, there's so many different suggestions. It's not cohesive. It's not woven together. And so I would be interested in knowing what you drew from others' testimony that you think are the most important. I loved Mr. Beal's use of the barbell explanation. We have certain people in the field now, but yet there's this little line in the middle, which is the middle class, and then there's everybody else at the other end of the barbell, and we're not recruiting heavily in that arena. That was a very important point. We know that in the auto technical sector, we lack just between 2020 by 2024, 642,000 auto mechanics and technicians we don't have. We know in aerospace, we lack right now, 40% of manufacturers have shortages. We will lack in high skills 1.2 million very shortly, and in lower skilled aerospace 3.3 million individuals. In welding, we are by 2024 to be 400,000 short in a career where you can get cancer because of the fumes. So we know we have these massive needs. I also know that Mr. Carlisle talked about his relative who three-dimensional mind. We also know that children who are mechanically inclined and tactile and can work in more than one dimension, we know that sometimes when they're as young as 2 years old. But our whole educational system is turned upside down. Those talents aren't appreciated, even with young students. So by the time they're old enough to get in STEM programs and all the rest of it, it's already too late. It's already too late. So you're all heads of major organizations, or what are the most important steps we can take? I sort of like the idea, Mr. Beal, that you had, that in communities that have a defense presence, and you know what? That's one of the few presences I even have in my district, not massive bases, but at least something, where we could pull together defense contractors, defense base personnel, and maybe have a day or a 3-day period where we would focus on these skills, working with the Department of Defense. I'm just thinking, how do we make this operational at the local level where people live and where educational systems vary in capability? You're up there at MIT, Mr. Bonvillian, one of my alma maters. And so I know how sophisticated that is. I was in Building 7. But it doesn't pan out in every community in the country. So let me ask you, from what you've heard, what are the most important steps? We've talked about AI, we've talked about shipbuilding. If you had to advise the president, what would you say in terms of workforce development? What are the most salient ideas that we as members can act on?
Congresswoman, I think that's a crucial question, and I do think there are threads that connect all of our witness points here. A lot of us have pointed to the need for a much stronger technical workforce, and you pointed out we're not creating the numbers in that workforce that we need to get to the advances that we have to reach. And that's a deep problem. So if we continue operating at the same scale, we're just not going to get there. And then in addition, in the defense workforce and the manufacturing workforce in general, manufacturing workforce faces, a shortage just because of retirements of between 2 and 4 million over the next decade. So we can't just keep the existing system going. We're going to have to scale this thing up if it's going to work. New education technologies, including online and virtual and augmented reality, computer gaming, digital tutors, all offer opportunities to scale up beyond our additional system. Manufacturing and other industrial trades are going to require blended learning. They're going to require online and face-to-face, where we can move a lot of material onto the online pieces. So I think that'll help in scaling. We're going to need short courses that take weeks and months, not years, to fit the kind of timetable that students have. And particularly, we're going to need to upskill a lot of our existing workforce, right? In these new technologies and new areas that are coming on. They're not going to be able to take a year off. We're going to need to size those and put them into modules that can be stacked and move towards credit and build, importantly, industry recognized credentials into those programs so that industry can recognize transferable credits, transferable skills, and act on them quickly and hire quickly. So those are a few, I think, of the key things we need to undertake for our technical workforce. We've got a lot to do with community colleges. We've got a lot to do with lifelong learning. But I think those three pieces could be, components in trying to get there.
Thank you, Ms. Capter. Thank you. Mr. Cole. You're muted. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Cole.
you. Appreciate that. My first question be directed to Dr. Griffiths and Mr. Bonvillian. Do either of the institutions that you represent have specific programs that are targeted towards turning out civilian defense workers, particularly in areas like engineering, cybersecurity, computer programming, those sorts of things, or do you just do it in general for your student body?
Mr. Cole, I can start on that answer. Yeah, we do have all those specialized skill areas and are paying, frankly, a lot of attention to scaling them up and are starting a whole new college of computing around information technologies. But in addition, MIT is tackling a big task in developing online education technologies. That's the part of MIT that I actually work in. So we have now created, there's 11,000 people on the campus at MIT, but we literally reach millions through our online education programs that all meet MIT quality. And then in addition, MIT is cooperating with a lot of programs, a number of programs that help on the skilled technical workforce. So for example, I'm involved in a program that DoD is supporting in part called MassBridge. The aim of that, Massachusetts is the 8th largest defense contracting state, very strong defense companies in the state, very real needs, particularly in the aerospace area, for a skilled workforce. MassBridge wants to develop a program across the community colleges and Massachusetts high schools and vocational schools that will greatly increase the number and increase the new advanced manufacturing skill base in the state by bringing programs to the community colleges and secondary schools, as well as state colleges in advanced manufacturing, the precise kind of skill sets that this high-end defense sector in the state really has need for. So a statewide program to pursue, to really put in place a program to educate for advanced manufacturing is something Massachusetts is trying to do. Some other states are trying to do this too. But I think getting to the manufacturing skill base, that advanced manufacturing skill base, will be key.
If I could add to that, Dakota State University was in most recent mission set in 1984 was actually to prepare people to work in the computing industry. We have a number of programs across the sectors, heavy in computer science and cybersecurity. But one of the things about South Dakota is that we don't have a community college system. So the public higher education system fills that role. And so my university offers everything from associate degrees all the way through PhDs. We do have a number of dual credit programs, so high schoolers can accelerate. We have a program that we set in place of working with the local technical colleges for stackable credentials so that students of whatever age can actually take a course, gather their credentials and stack those credentials over time, going in and out of the workforce according to their time frame. And we paired that with a program of apprenticeships with businesses and industry around, including the potential for some online apprenticeships. We have just established a what we might call a rapid response non-credit educational program for workforce development in our region and in our state, which is aimed to be very, very responsive to workforce needs with courses that can be developed very, very quickly, deployed very quickly, and used for reskilling, upskilling, looking at the retired workforce and bringing some of them back. So there are a lot of pockets of this kind of innovation going on around the United States, where particularly smaller institutions who are able to move a little bit more quickly than the larger institutions. So there's a lot of innovation around. We're part of several consortia of schools that are developing these programs and collaborating with others in the area of computing and cybersecurity in particular, but we have our artificial intelligence degrees available in those areas as well.
I'm curious if outside of DOD itself, I sit on the committee that funds Department of Labor, Department of Education as well. Is there any coordination between DOT and these other departments who have quite a lot of money to be able to specific programs that literally address defense worker shortage? My guess is no.
Well, Congressman, there is a new attempt to put together an interagency task force to really start to develop, common programs and programs that match up better across these agencies. We don't really have that now. You're right. But I think there's a growing awareness that programs at the Department of Education that focus, frankly, on college education, at the Department of Labor that focus on underemployed workers, that those need to mesh better. They need to talk to each other. And then secondly, the defense needs in areas like advanced manufacturing and new technology skills are going to have to draw on the programs that exist. So there is an effort that's begun on an interagency basis to try and make those programs pull better together.
Is there something we could do that would facilitate that, speed that up, and help with that kind of coordination?
I think you all could really insist that the executive branch pursue it, and provide some look at the possibility of providing funding support for programs that get to this complementarity that we really need across our programs, because they really don't work together well now, and they need to.
Yeah, I think that's something we ought to look at. General Carlisle, let me go to you.
Mr. Cole, Mr. Cole, I'm sorry, you're over time.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
We have language in the report language that starts in our bill. So I'm going to need your help when we go to conference with the Senate to keep that moving forward. So thank you.
Yeah.
I do not see Mr. Ruppersberger or Mr. Quare. That makes you the winner, Mr. Aguilar. I'm going to let you go before me because I've already voted.
All righty. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Beal, you talked a little bit about some of the programs and some of the efforts that you have on the shipbuilding side. Can you talk to me a little bit about Newport News Shipbuilding and Huntington Ingalls relationship, and how you're providing professional development through your careers, specifically with the companies. The apprenticeship schools in particular have allowed some of these opportunities to pursue bachelor's degrees while folks are building their career. Can you talk about some of the successes of those programs, and what have you learned that could apply to some of your other peers as well within industry?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question as well. We definitely recognize the benefit in lifelong learning and career development. And Newport News Shipbuilding here as part of HII, we spend approximately $100 million annually in training and development of our workforce. That includes continuing education outside of the company, where individuals can go and pursue associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, to kind of better prepare them for the next position that they're actually interested in, and to strengthen their overall knowledge in somewhat in the positions they're in. But I will talk about the apprentice school for a second, since you asked specifically about that. Our apprentice school has been around since 1919 and is the foundation or the cornerstone of our leadership factory here at the company. We invest vigorously in that program. We have roughly 27 programs in our apprentice school. And so these are individuals that actually compete to come into the school with about a 10% acceptance rate over at the apprentice school. Many people will be surprised to recognize that 10% of our entrants actually already have bachelor's degrees as they come into the program. But our program there, we have 27 programs, 26 of which, when individuals complete those programs, they're actually coming out with accredited associate's degrees. That's something that we recently got awarded as well as we have one of our advanced optional programs that individuals completing our marine engineering program will finish the apprentice school with an A-BET accredited engineering degree. So we believe in lifelong learning. We invest in it in the company, and we see the value of that from a retention standpoint with our organization, as well as growth and development.
What would be your advice to small companies who contract with DoD on efforts that they can take to continue to make investments in their workforce?
I think that's key. We talked a little earlier with respect to retention and the war on talent. One of the things we're proud of here at the company, although we invest that amount in continuing education with our workforce, there are no requirements for individuals to remain with the company after they've completed their educational pursuits. And what we look at that from, and really that's not just Newport News, that's the corporate perspective as well from HII, is we see those intangible benefits from that because those employees are staying with the company. They're actually some of your best advertisement when you're going out looking to attract talent to the company as well. So we see the value of that. And I would encourage other organizations that may not invest in their people in that manner, that it is a wise investment, that the return on it is pretty significant.
Thank you so much. Ms. Griffith, I wanted to ask you, one of my priorities has been building a diverse cyber workforce in the federal government that includes some local universities, a very parochial interest of mine, Cal State San Bernardino, that seeks to build partnerships with the Department of Defense and other federal agencies. Can you talk to me a little bit about the lens of workforce specialized within AI and how we can support professional development within DoD to ensure that we maintain a diverse AI workforce that builds careers within the department?
Thank you for that question. Yes, the Defense AI workforce consists of researchers, implementers, and deployment specialists who are needed to create and maintain AI solutions within the military. The senior leaders, junior leaders, and end users needed to shape the adoption and responsible use of AI solutions. And then the acquisition and contracting personnel needed to quickly and effectively purchase solutions. So Department of Defense needs to recruit and train its researchers, implementers, and deployment specialists until they have enough proficient technologists to actually envision and create solutions that the department needs. So one is sort of get through, implement what we have, and then look to the future. But it also needs to train and educate its leaders and end users until they can understand how AI can transform their organizations, manage that transformation, and then use AI responsibly and effectively. And most importantly, it needs to incentivize AI and other emerging technology literacy among its senior leaders. And at the point today is that kind of incentivization is just lacking. It doesn't.
Thank you so much. Yield back, Madam Chair.
I don't see Mr. Womack, so that puts it to you, Mr. Carter, and then after Carter, Mr. Kilmer. Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Madam. Come on. Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Bonavide, you noted in your testimony that small firms are largely unable to support workforce education in new manufacturing technologies unless they have orders in place requiring these new technologies. I think this is a good example of the communication gap that exists between DoD and small business. They want to support DoD. They want to support the mission. Can you share with us recommendations, ways to close this gap?
Thank you, Congressman. You pointed to, I think, a very critical problem. So the large manufacturers, including DoD's larger manufacturers, are moving ahead on, implementing higher productivity technologies. But the smaller manufacturers are really kind of falling behind. They're not able to adapt to these new advanced manufacturing technologies, in particular at the pace that we need. And since small manufacturers produce about, I think it's 46% of US industrial output, we have a real supply chain problem unless we bring the small manufacturers along with the large ones. And a core problem there is on the workforce education side. Now, small manufacturers are not going to move on providing new kind of workforce education for new technologies unless they have the new technologies. So DoD programs that encourage manufacturers to, particularly small ones, to adopt these new technologies, digital production, robotics, additive, and so on. We need to encourage that technology to get embedded because that's a real boost to move small manufacturers to get the training for their workforces that they need. Now, we've seen a number of states that have moved on apprenticeship programs. South Carolina, North Carolina, Minnesota, Colorado, a number of others. I've spent time in South Carolina, and South Carolina has a statewide apprenticeship program that reaches all of their manufacturers, small and large. And it's a very impressive program. I spent time in Charleston, South Carolina, where they're developing a youth apprenticeship program that starts in the junior year of high school. And these kids, spend the morning at high school. And by the way, their employers in the apprenticeship programs tell them they've got to take science and math courses. Midday, they take the technical courses at the nearby technical college. Then later in the afternoon, they go to their company where they're earning quite good wages. So it takes high school experience, which can often be disruptive. It takes those high school students and puts them into much more mature environments. And South Carolina has been able to make this program work, not just with large employers like, Boeing or Mercedes in the Charleston area or Volvo, but also with the whole group of smaller employers, the supplier base. And these employers have been the ones that have been the strongest initial supporters of these apprenticeship programs because they've got a workforce shortage problem. They've got a workforce skills problem. The apprenticeship programs help them to get their workforce to where they need to go. So, Congressman, I think these kinds of apprenticeship programs that the states can help encourage could be very key. And the Labor Department has got an apprenticeship program, of course, and that needs to be built and expanded. And DoD, it fits right into DoD's needs and its programs. The assets that I described in my written testimony can pick up on these apprenticeship programs.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Apprenticeship solution to a labor issue. But what about the capital investment in robotics and machinery without having a contract in hand?
That capital investment is a key problem, particularly for smaller firms. There's no question about it. We don't really have a good financing mechanism for that, which is an issue area we need to think about because those capital investments in turn will help drive workforce investments too. So I agree with you that there's an issue and a gap there.
Making them partner with one of the bigger players is not really their contract. What are you about?
Yeah, capital investment's also a problem for the technical colleges too. We have to figure out a way to address that. Mr. Kilmer, and then if people come back, it'll be in this order: Womack, Adderholt, or Diaz-Balart on the Republican side. Mr. Kilmer.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you to you and to the ranking member for having a hearing on, I think, what's a really important and interesting topic. I want to apologize if it looks like I'm on my cell phone from the phone booth in the cloakroom. It's because I am. My office is far away in Rayburn. I might as well be in Delaware. I also just want to thank those who referenced the value of apprenticeships. The committee took a trip, and I was grateful to my colleagues for coming out to Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. Their apprenticeship program is just gangbusters. They have done a fantastic job partnering with Olympic College, offering high-skilled, specialized apprenticeship opportunities. Graduates get an associate's in technical arts and a journey-level certification through DLL. About a quarter of the workforce there has gone through that. And Mr. Beal, I particularly appreciated your comments around how Huntington Ingalls is also leveraging apprenticeship. So thank you for that. And thanks, Mr. Aguilar, for bringing that up. I guess the other thing I wanted to just raise, and maybe Mr. Bonavillian, I'll kick this question to you. I'm really struck that the ability for, our Department of Defense to prevail on any number of its missions depends on cutting edge innovation within our technical base. And that requires fostering innovative learning opportunities for the workforce. What we've seen, at least from what I can tell, is the DoD investing in STEM education opportunities in K-12, in higher ed, beyond the educational infrastructure that it owns. For example, the war colleges, the department partners with all levels of public and private civilian institutions. So I guess my question is this: how are we doing? Will these investments in education programs meet the need? Do you have a sense of how Congress ought to measure return on investment? As we look at these programs, does Congress need to provide the department any authorities or resources it doesn't have, particularly so that it can anticipate future needs and target its education efforts accordingly?
Congressman, I've paid particular attention to the Advanced Manufacturing Institutes, and there are 9 that the Department of Defense sponsors, and DoD sponsors these because its manufacturers have to get to advanced manufacturing if they're going to stay up, if they're going to be able to effectively compete. And we can't, continue this pattern if we want to have secure supply chains and get to modernization of relentless continuing outsourcing. We're going to have to build our own capabilities, but to do that, we've got to be able to compete effectively. So the manufacturing institutes have taken on the role of nurturing these new advanced manufacturing technologies and moving them into the manufacturing base, including the defense manufacturing base. And then part of their responsibility is on the workforce side. So in a recent National Academy study, the academies recommended that the institutes, and many of them are doing this, need to develop a set of best practices in this skilled technical workforce area, to develop educational materials that can be used by industry and by education institutions in these defense ecosystems, develop online materials to help with scale up, develop industry recognized credentials, because again, we don't have curriculum in these new advanced areas. It's got to get built in large part, right? They need to implement this, they need to form regional engagements, the academies recommended, and many institutes are doing this with area industry, with area educational institutions. And they've got to map skill demand and develop skill roadmaps that in turn tie to their technical advanced manufacturing roadmaps as well, right? I think those skill roadmaps that will plot demand and the way demand is being met is a great way to get to the metrics part of your question. And we don't measure this now, but the institutes could start measuring in these advanced technology fields to the extent that we're bringing our workforce on and it's meeting the numbers that our manufacturers are going to require.
Anything further you think Congress ought to do on this front in the 20 seconds I got left?
I mentioned 4 assets that DoD has got. Its IBAS program, these amazing service training development centers that are in Orlando that develop VI and AI and digital learning technologies for military training. The Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation and the Manufacturing Institutes at Mantech. These are all assets that could be deployed by DoD given additional resources to start to meet the scale of the problem that we really now face. So I'd look hard at there's a number of other programs, of course, I've just mentioned 4, but I think those programs are certainly worthy of a close look and potential scale up to really meet this problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Well, thank you. I do not see Mr. Womack. I'm going to go slow in case they pop up. Or Mr. Adderholt, or Mr. Diaz-Balart, Mr. Ruppersberger, or Mr. Cuellar. So I'm going to ask kind of a different, kind of a summarizing question if all 3 of you just maybe take a minute and a half. So what I'm kind of hearing from you is there needs to be a whole of government approach. Local government, state government, federal government, and all of our government approaches also have the dotted line to working with the business community for economic development in their sphere. They also have a dotted line to education, whether it's high school whether it's technical school, whether it's college. So the DoD needs a better workforce to be ready for the future. Our industries need a better workforce to go into the future. We're going to be talking to our next panel where they've actually kind of put a committee and looked at it together. But if you have one idea of something that you think works well and we should build on it, or one thing that you think we're missing that this committee should be looking at. And we're going to have to talk to our sister organizations here in appropriations, the Department of Labor, Education. We're going to have to talk, speak with the authorizers as well too. So just kind of take a minute, maybe give us your wish list of something that you would like to really see us hone in on. And we can start in the opposite order of which people gave their testimony. We'll start with you, sir, Mr. Carlisle.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you very much. I think, and it was highlighted by my esteemed colleagues on the witness here, it really is, you mentioned it, it's a whole of government. It's actually a whole of country approach, and I think that's what it needs to be. I almost feel like it's almost Manhattan, I know that used a lot, but the Manhattan Project type discussion, because it really does take the interagency to work together. Obviously, it takes Congress on legislation and appropriations to be able to put it together. And then it takes industry input as well. We reacted in the pandemic with things like the Paycheck Protection Program and things like that. If you talk about capital investment and the ability to do advanced manufacturing, if you talk about internships and apprenticeships, if you talk about small business having a problem bridging that the valley of death or waiting clearance. So if there's a way that with industry contributing and the government contributing to kind of put together a holistic plan, there are some great ideas out there that work individually in regional areas with respect to the CTE. There's some great programs in STEM education. I think we need to continue to work on diversity within our workforce and really get into every bit of the talent pools that exist out there, the people that don't have the opportunity because they just don't know that these opportunities exist. And then, what the work environment's going to be like in the future with machine learning, AI, automation, robotics as we move forward. But it's really got to be, in my opinion, a whole of country approach, because we are in a competition that we have we've got to do something to that effect, because the workforce and the innovation that exists inside the American public is really our answer to this competition that we're in. So I do think it's that approach, and how do you bring all those together in a consolidated, holistic approach to the challenge.
Mr. Beal?
Great intro, Madam Chairman, and completely agree that this has to be in a holistic approach. And to take on your question about one thing, if I had one thing that would recommend, it would be looking at the successes that we've had in different parts of the country and from a regional approach perspective. And we talked earlier about some of the things that we're doing with early identification, early introduction to STEM, and obviously that M is more than mathematics, is manufacturing as well. But when we're looking at the here and now, because right now we have a significant deficit across the country when we're looking at skilled labor. And one solution to that, and we've seen success in other parts of the region, is a regional approach with regional training facilities. And those training facilities can really offer the state-of-the-art training that we need to accelerate the learning and the growth that we actually have in the industrial base with our skilled trades. One such example of that is some of the pilot things that we're doing here in Virginia, down in Danville, with the accelerated training center that we have down there for skilled trades. When I look at a region such as we have here in Hampton Roads, in the hub of maritime employers that we have here, there's a great opportunity to establish something like that right here where the work is going on. One of the things,
be a little closer would be fine.
One of the things I would offer, though, as we're looking to develop those regional training facilities, that we think about equity and access as well, because there are barriers out there to some of our most underserved communities, and ensuring that we actually have solutions that enable them to take advantage of these training programs is going to be paramount to the success of those individuals, the industrial base, and our communities in which we all live.
Very true. I have a lot of first and second generation Americans whose families don't even know what an apprenticeship program or a trade school is, or people who, because of at times the lack of mobility in our society, don't have family members, and so sometimes it makes a difference for people to even know there's jobs out there. So well said, and thank you for saying that. Dr. Griffith?
Thank you. Yes, I agree in the whole of America approach in a way. I think this requires bold moves. Things are moving quickly, especially in other countries, and China is not the only country that we compete with. I think if I were to have one recommendation, it would be our recommendation on the National Defense Education Act version 2. The first one came about just after World War II and was focused on STEM education and language education. And our recommendation is to focus this on STEM and AI and software development and those kinds of careers. To me, if we don't focus on the future, we'll never build a sustainable workforce. We'll just only fix it with a Band-Aid short term. And to really address this issue in the long term, we really have to get to K through 12 education. We need to improve the teachers and give the teachers at those levels the skills they need to be able to teach. We need to expose young people to the range of opportunities that exist and will exist. And, just in the final statement, only 42% of Americans earn any degree of any kind, and we don't want to leave 58% behind. So I think we do need this all-of-government approach, involve industry, involve academia, and focus on the next generation. But that will only work if the government reorganizes and reforms itself to be able to accept the young people who are going to develop skills in those areas. So it's a two-part recommendation.
Ken, you had a few members who hadn't asked questions yet. We were trying to find out if they were staying for the second vote and coming back. Mr. Mormack, Mr. Adderholt, Mr. Diaz-Balart. We're in touch with Rupert Berger and Cuellar's office.
Yeah, Dutch just got back. I just did the second vote, so I'm good for.
Okay. You're good. Okay. So we have heard from any of the other offices? No, we have not. Mr. Ruppersberger, if your office is listening and you're on the way back for a question?
He should be there. We walked up together.
I'll give him another second because he is. I just got something in the chat. Talk about, you should have seen members of Congress when we first did our virtual hearings. It was not beautiful. If you think this one's rough because of votes, but the other ones are really back. So Mr. Ruthberger will be with us in just a minute, and here he is.
Right now.
Okay. I knew you had great questions, so I wanted to wait for you. So you get the last question
I was thinking about walking over from the vote on the elevator. So here goes. You ready?
Okay.
Good. Well, first thing, I think thank the panel for being here. This is something very important to the future of our national security, and I'm glad we have this topic. To the panel, thank you for your time today and lending us your expertise as we discuss a very important topic on better preparing the next generation to lead our great country in the matters of national security. Mr. Von Villen and Dr. Griffiths, from the academic point of view, I consistently hear from colleges and university in my district that they have very little ability to engage their students with DoD missions and research until those students are employed directly on a DoD program. My question is, what can the Department of Defense do to better engage with undergraduate and graduate students jointly on research within with the aim to better excite these students to come to work for the government on a national security mission once they obtain their degrees. The whole panel.
Shall I jump in? Thank you for that question. I think one of the best ways to engage students while they're still in school would be to make their professors, their faculty members, more aware of the opportunities. So we've seen a program where our faculty go and work with one or another agency during the summer, come back and bring those ideas back to their students, and then their students engage in summer internships and get a real sense of what's going on with practical internships. What we found then is those students are often selected to get their clearances early, and many of them have their clearances by the end of their third year, and many of them also have a job offer by the end of their third year. So I think making the faculty members more aware of the opportunities will bring along a bunch of students at a time rather than focusing on single students at a time. That's one of the ways we do it.
Congressman, I would just want to echo Ms. Griffith's comments there. That would be, I think that internship and personal experience kinds of programs, so they could be more broadly offered. That's a great way to introduce talented students to DoD hard, DoD complex problems.
Okay, good. Anyone else?
Yeah, Representative Ruppersberger, Huck Carl here. It's good to see you again, sir. It's been a while since we traveled together, but I think part of this is on DoD. I think DoD needs to really reach out. There's so much being done in academic institutions and so many opportunities. I think there are some programs episodic, as Ms. Griffith said, but I think if there's a broader push on DoD to get out to these universities, and it's bring some of these educators out to see what we're doing with the equipment or with the technology that's being developed. So, it's really an outreach on the part of DoD to really spend time and effort in showcasing what we're doing and what we're trying to do, and have that interaction and get a better view of DoD inside of the academic institutions, and certainly with the educators and the students.
Well, I agree. That's why I asked the question. I'm chair of the Naval Academy Board, and another Steve Womack is chair of the West Point Board, and we've had conversations. Yeah.
I can't hear anybody right now.
Can you hear? Hello? Betty? Is China involved with this? I think Betty, can everybody else hear me? Well, let me finish this question. And Dr. Griffith, and what I was saying about the boards, they have a summer program, and where a lot of people who want to go come and they learn about the institutions. And I think we have to do the same thing a lot more aggressively with other colleges, and especially where we need engineers and people like that. With your background, Dr. Griffith, though, you'd like to understand better how than most about how easy of a time of these high-skilled workers with technical degrees have finding jobs in the private sector with extremely high compensation. And the government will never be able to compete with these salaries. So what are the drivers to attracting these workers? We always hear the mission, but a lot of times they don't become aware of the mission until they are hired. So how do we fix that?
Yeah, you were absolutely right, Representative.
Betty? Is Betty back? Guess not. Go ahead.
Shall I go ahead? Okay. I think you're absolutely right. It's making people aware, and I think if you wanted to formalize this,
We have a vote going on, so that's okay.
Keep talking.
Keep going. This was the idea behind the civilian National Digital Reserve Service. If you wanted to formalize that kind of relationship between
And I'm
academics
trying to also cheer time.
and the government. So that's what we were hoping would happen as a result of that. I think the other opportunity exists for the DoD to recognize that some of their existing employees could in fact do a sort of top up and get the additional qualifications through a relationship with academia. And a number of academic institutions have done a lot of work to understand the technical education and training that is received in the military, and to create the equivalencies in their own academic programs. So we have a number of articulation agreements with the National Security Agency, with the Community College of the Air Force, etc., where people can top up their credentials, if you like, and earn the remainder of their degree online while they're working in the government. So there's a two-way effect there. I think bringing the government workers together with academics will improve the situation.
Okay, good. Thank you for your answers. And the committee now is going to take a brief recess.
This hearing will resume and come back to order. I wish I could have thanked a little more eloquently the first panel for what they did. They were so patient. It was a great discussion, and it something to be followed up with, and ask the authorizers also to look into this issue, as well as the Education and Workforce Authorization Committee. So we're going to start the second panel. I see you're all present. We're done voting, so you won't face the disruptions that the first panel had. We're pleased to welcome today 4 distinguished individuals as witnesses, and the subcommittee wants to thank each and every one of you for your service. In the last panel, we heard many different ideas that were presented to address our defense workforce development challenges. And if you had an opportunity to hear them and hear the questions, I know you'll be taking a lot of what was discussed in consideration when you're deliberating your challenges for the department. So Undersecretary Cisneros should be presenting testimony on behalf of the department and the services. And we have other people also participating. Undersecretary of the Department of Air Force, Gina Ortiz-Jones, Mr. Christopher Lohman, Senior Officer performing the duties of Undersecretary for the Department of the Army, and Ms. Meredith Berger, the Senior Official performing the duties of Undersecretary for the Department of Navy. I want to thank you all for being here, and we will start off with Undersecretary Cisneros.
Chairwoman McCollum, Ranking Member Calvert, and members of this distinguished subcommittee, I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today, along with my esteemed colleagues from the military departments, to discuss the Department of Defense's efforts to recruit, retain, and develop the military and civilian workforce of the future. In the 2 months I have served as the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel Readiness, I am awed and humbled every day by our service members and DoD civilians for their incredible talent and hard work to address new national security challenges. Yet they can only continue to do this through a sustained emphasis on workforce development, one that focuses on recruiting, retention, training, and education of a workforce that can compete and win against our most advanced competition now and in the future. We know we are in fierce competition for talent, and we must address this issue with the same urgency and emphasis we place on development of our weapon systems, our operational readiness. From the start of this administration, the Secretary of Defense made it clear that taking care of our people and developing the workforce would be at the top of his agenda. He has highlighted the need for innovative thinking with respect to managing our people, cultivating talent, and creating new career paths and incentives for services, both uniformed and civilian. We must drive significant shifts in the way our institutions think about the intersection of technology and personnel. We must start with how we recruit. The department relies on multiple levers to supporting recruiting efforts, including financial incentives and advertising campaigns. We also recognize that to recruit and retain the best and brightest, we must have a diverse and inclusive force representative of the nation they serve. The department leverages relationships with historical Black colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions to expand its reach across demographics and to help convey the benefit of military service. We must also remain vigilant to ensure the military compensation packages is attractive to recruit and retain the talent we need today and into the future. In personnel readiness, we will continue to review policies to assist the impact of recruiting efforts, and the military services are using targeted retention levers to mitigate shortages. We also rely on a variety of programs such as lateral entry to recruit highly qualified individuals directly from the civilian population to fill critical requirements. The department's civilian workforce is a critical element of the total force, performing a vital function in support of the warfighter. The department recognizes the need to recruit the right civilian talent to maintain our competitive edge and succeed against modern threats. As critical enablers of our warfighters, DoD civilians serve in a wide variety of roles and areas around the country and the world. We must recognize them as an integral partner in our total force and develop life cycle programs and pipelines for recruiting, retaining, reskilling, and upskilling like we do with our military personnel. To achieve a competitive edge, we are investing in broadening and outreaching and increasing our use of skills and competency-based assessments. In June of this year, we are We launched the DoD Civilian Career website to promote civilian employment opportunities and career paths and to debunk perception that DoD service is solely a uniform service. Congress has also provided streamlined direct hiring authorities for high demand skills. So on September 30th, I provided guidance to DoD components on maximizing the use of hiring flexibilities to include direct hiring, which will allow us to attract and recruit civilian talent with expertise in AI, data science, and software development. The department is proactively focused on growing and developing its pipeline of future talent and has seen great success in the use of a variety of internships, scholarships, and fellowship programs. DoD is currently expanding its use of public-private talent exchanges in order to provide opportunities for DoD employees to expand knowledge within their function areas of expertise. We must also provide adaptive and relevant professional civilian education that emphasizes innovative thinking and ingenuity in warfighting concepts, ensures responsibility management of national defense assets, and builds expertise through a concentration on data-centric digital skills and culture. We're at the nexus of innovation workforce development for the department. We are partners. With our partners, my staff is working to support the military departments, combatant commanders, and other elements of the department in delivering the most qualified, capable, and technologically proficient force possible. We recognize that a life cycle of investment in our service members and their DoD civilian colleagues will allow us to win the battles of the future. With continued improvements, we believe we can ensure our nation's military remains the greatest fighting force the world has ever seen. Thank you again for this opportunity today to showcase our current efforts in this area. We appreciate the subcommittee's continued support for the men and women who serve our great nation and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I am going to ask a question first. I asked the last question for the last panel. And I know you have other folks there that can chime in if you want them on any of the questions that the members ask, as I did introduce the panel that's on the dais with you. In March, Secretary Deputy Hicks established a council to address workforce challenges, including workforce development, talent management, professional and military education, and the council has also been charged with important issues like sexual assault, racism, suicide, domestic violence, and other things in the military. Under Secretary Cisneros, the Deputies Workforce Council has a lot on its plate with the scope of these wide issues. So I would like to ask you, how is the department and the council defining workforce development? How is the council going to ensure that workforce development piece is adequately addressed and not lost among all the other issues that you have to address? Does this definition match the service's understanding of workforce development and modernization programs? And can you share with us some more background on the composition of the council and how these services are represented in council meetings? In other words, with all this on your plate, how are you going to prioritize it? And I would also add, and I did a little bit when I was talking to you earlier, that some of the issues with racism, suicide, and sometimes sexual harassment, those can all be things that keep people in a job or out of a job. So you dealing with those issues are important to our workforce, and I want to acknowledge that, but that's on your plate along with what we've asked you to do.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you for that question. The DWC, the Deputies Workforce Council, was something when Deputy Secretary Hicks came in, was sworn in, she started this and really took off and went running with this. And really, she chairs the DWC with the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And on the DWC, they've addressed a number of P&R issues from the ones that you've suggested, whether it be the IRC implementation, sexual harassment, sexual assault, diversity, equity, and inclusion, retention, and recruiting, childcare. There are a number of issues that we've dealt with on the DWC, and we will continue to deal with a number of these issues that affect the personnel and the readiness of the people that serve in the Department of Defense, both in uniform and the civilian colleagues. Workforce management is also an item that actually just recently we addressed and that we discussed. And The administration of the department from the secretary on down is dedicated to really moving the department forward on these issues and really developing a way that we can not only make sure that we collect and have the individuals that we need and the talent that we need here, but also we need a way to identify what we are missing. There are a number of key issues that we've kind of taken a broad approach to, and we are now kind of working to kind of single in on those. There are different areas of cyber where we need AI, writing data, collecting data. All these areas are where we need individuals and we need expertise, and we need specific expertise in these different areas. And this is one of the things that we are doing and that we've talked about, is how we can single in on these specific areas of need and really how we can take advantage of that, and knowing who has these expertise both in our civilian workforce and in our uniform workforce moving forward. And also working to identify the needs that we are going to need not only today, but in the future.
Great. So let me then just really quickly ask to some of the services that are on. So how will what we're doing and some of the implementations that are that will come forward as you're presented in the future, what expectations should this committee have in order to support our shared mission and having a strong, vibrant workforce? So that's going to probably, I would think, require some funding programs that will have to be identified in specific lines to make sure that the money stays there and that we're laser focused on workforce development. So is that kind of what I might be expecting in the next budget? Because there's been such a priority, such an emphasis placed on this.
Man, we can go to the services to let them talk about what funding needs they may need in order to implement how we can have a more vibrant civilian workforce and to deal with a lot of these work needs. And we can start with the Air Force.
Sure. Well, Madam Chairwoman, thank you for your leadership on this issue. I know you've spent a lot of time making sure that we are adequately ensuring everyone can serve to their full potential. So I thank you for your attention here. To your specific question about need for additional resources, certainly that would be helpful as we look at making sure our airmen and our guardians and our civil servants have the resources to compete in a high-end fight. And as we look at making sure that we are adequately recruiting the right kinds of folks with specialties in AI and cyber and so forth, as well as making sure that we retain those folks. Each of these things will require additional resources. So we appreciate your support in that regard. Additionally, additional support, for example, with our ROTC programs, as well as our junior ROTC programs. I think in the previous panel, many of those folks pointed to the fact that we need to get to much further left of where we are now to ensure our young folks are ready to serve academically and are exposed to unique service opportunities in the military. And certainly we want those folks to consider the Air Force and the Space Force. And so additional resources, for example, in the junior ROTC program, which is a significant source of diversity for us. Over 70% of those folks, 60% of those folks come from underrepresented groups, 40% are women. And so as we inspire them to a career of public service, we certainly would appreciate your support in that regard. We also know that the ability to invest in these programs, though, will require that we divest from other programs that are frankly going to be less useful in a high-end fight, platforms that are not going to be survivable, relevant, or effective. And as you point out, there are numerous ways in which we could better invest those things, to include investing in programs that ensure that our personnel are ready for the high-end fight.
Anyone else want to add to that from any of the other services? What you've been thinking about? We heard ROTC, which we already fund. So if you put extra in it, we're going to put strings on how that ROTC funding goes into ROTC plus workforce development. But any of the other services want to add anything to that? Well, hearing none, I will turn to my esteemed colleague from California, the ranking member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to get back on the subject that you're perfectly aware of, and that's the current ratio of civilian to uniform personnel is at an all-time high. I guess I'll point this first to Secretary Cisneros. You may be aware of the fact that of that statistic. And in my view, that's unsustainable. I know that many civilian employees, particularly at our depots, are needed to carry out DoD's national security mission. And I know I was here when we expanded the intelligence operations to obviously take on the enemy at hand. However, there's been significant growth throughout DoD's bureaucracy. And I don't see how we can afford to maintain the current civilian workforce into the future if we're forced to balance those costs with procurement and research efforts, which are absolutely necessary. So how do we look at middle management, unjustified bureaucracy to maximize the ability of our high-skilled professionals? And can DoD better apply automation, artificial intelligence to career fields like healthcare management? Obviously, those who are in the intelligence business, where we have a lot of people that are assessing one thing or another, financial management, supply chain, logistics, to save a lot of money, billions of dollars, and gradually, not having to fire anybody, but just gradually bringing down the workforce and closing obsolete systems and processes. So first, I'll ask the Secretary to address that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for bringing up that question. And I think throughout the department, we are looking to see where we can use technology everywhere, whether it's in healthcare or weapon systems, to see how we can become more efficient and more productive. And I will let the services talk about that a little more. But I do not believe we can put a ratio or a number on the amount of civilians that we have. The civilian workforce that we have at the Department of Defense is an integral part of the defense of our nation. They play critical roles in the work that we do. They enable the war fighters so they could be out there defending the nation and really be out there in an operational mode. And so I think it's important that we remember the importance and how important our civilian workforce is. And it's just not, I think it's not proper for us to put a number on it. We have so many military personnel, so therefore we should have so many civilian personnel.
But you realize, Secretary, in the history of the United States Department of Defense, this is the highest proportion of civilian employees relative to military force in the history of the Pentagon. Do you think that this responds to World War II or to Korea or Vietnam or any of the wartime issues? But don't you think that we can look at that workforce and gradually make that workforce more efficient and smaller?
So we are always looking to make our workforce more efficient and to see how we can do things better and at a more efficient cost. I know we are constantly doing that, and I'll let the undersecretaries talk to that here in a second. But again, I believe the civilian workforce here at the Department of Defense is an integral part of the defense of our nation, and they play key roles. And we need to make sure that we continue to support them in those key roles. And with that, I'll turn it over to the service secretaries to talk about their civilian workforce. We start with the Air Force.
Representative Calvert, thank you for the question. We are not currently incentivizing civilians to retire at this point. The Air Force Personnel Center, however, is conducting a needs assessment to determine which units may need voluntary early retirement authority or voluntary separation incentive payments. I think when we look at our civilian force, though, when we think of the total force, certainly our active duty, our Guard and Reserve, we also look at the significant contributions made by our civil servants. Certainly, they bring highly technical expertise in many areas, for example, at our Air Force Research Laboratory and our some of our more highly technical career fields. We're also, though, I think more broadly looking at how we ensure we don't cut ourselves off from key civilian talent, especially as, frankly, many have kind of reshaped their expectations of quality of life and work-life balance due to COVID. And so we're actually wanting to make sure we've got the right, certainly the right size, but also the right capabilities within our civilian force. So looking at everything from telework to some other incentive programs, again, to make sure that we've got the right capabilities in our civilian force to make sure that the entire department is as strong as it can be. And I'll pass it over to my colleague from Navy.
Thank you, Representative Calvert, and I will echo my colleagues in that we assess the civilian force as part of the total force, and it's an important contribution for capability as the Undersecretary from the Air Force just mentioned. As we talk about the civilian force at the department, and we write out, we capitalize sailors, Marines, civilians, and it is because of their contribution. However, to your point, we are constantly assessing to make sure that we have the right people in the right job at the right time to be able to deliver warfighting capability. And that is the metric that we are using to make sure that we are meeting that need, and it is a need that is changing. So we are constantly assessing to make sure that we are against the need.
Go to the Army.
Thank you, Ranking Member Calvert. So in the Army has recently published an Army People Strategy that includes both a civilian implementation plan and a military implementation plan. So we assess the Army civilians along with the total force. Right now, the Army civilian workforce represents about a 4-to-1 ratio. So 4 military to 1 civilian. It's been relatively flat for the last 5 years. And so that ratio hasn't changed. But as we work through in the civilian implementation plan and assess the knowledge, skills, behaviors, and attributes required by the future force, at the same time we're assessing that for our military members, we will execute the appropriate analysis to find out how the incorporation of new technologies such as AI and machine learning, data analytics affect the civilian workforce along with the military members. Over. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to make a point, Madam Chair. The Marine Corps on their own is bringing down the civilian workforce. And I congratulate Commandant for taking an aggressive movement to look at efficiencies. But the Department of Defense is one of the largest, if not the largest enterprise in the world. And as everyone is flattening their the middle management structures across the country, we're no different. And again, I don't question the fact that civilian workforce is important, but should we have it exceed the military, the number of uniforms that we have versus relative to civilians? I don't think anyone would agree to that. But it's growing in that direction. And so it seems like there's always a reason not to look especially at the middle management structure within the Department of Defense. And I'm not just talking in the building in the Pentagon, I'm talking out throughout the enterprise worldwide. So I just will continue to harp on that, as you know, and bring it up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I think as we get those numbers and talk about them, where the numbers come from and how they're counted and how dual hatters are counted, would be something, that the committee, to answer some of Mr. Calvert's questions, would be interested in knowing. So if you're a dual hatter, are you counted twice? Are you only counted on the civilian side? Or are you only counted on the other side? And that goes more to our Guard and our Reserve than it does. But as we see our Guard and Reserve play a more important role, there's also that civilian aspect that keeps them in their readiness phase. Mr. Ruppersberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Cisneros, good to see you. We served together, and I'm glad to see that you're working at the Pentagon. And you did a good job in Congress, and we're looking forward to your job at the Pentagon. And how are your sons? Doing okay?
Well, thank you for those comments, sir. The sons are good. They're wild and crazy as ever.
That's good. Yeah, when do you have grandchildren? Grandkids are the gift you get for not killing your own kids when you raise them. Okay, getting to the work. I wanted to call your attention to an issue that we have all been seeing play out across the country regarding supply chain shortages. One of the companies in my congressional district, Phillips Corporation, is a family-owned metal machinery supplier that supports the Department of Defense and other critical customers with highly specialized machine tools, servicing and workforce training needed for the U.S. to compete globally. Phillips' team has brought to my attention the impact that the microelectronic supply chain shortages will have on their and other U.S. small businesses' ability to supply critical DoD programs and weapons systems. We cannot allow the supply chain issues we rely on with the commercial market to also affect the readiness of the DoD programs and possibly scores of highly skilled technical workers who manufacture and maintain these systems. My question, what issues have been brought to your attention within the department? To what degree are you coordinating with other leaders at the Pentagon and other federal agencies? And how do you believe we should prioritize national security programs that depend on components from the commercial market to maintain readiness? We must maintain our U.S. manufacturing base and broader economic and national security interests. Did you get it?
I got it, sir. Thank you for that question. I believe that, the department believes everything that you just said is true, right? It's important for our workforce to have the materials that they need in order to support the Department of Defense. But I believe this is a question that is more well suited for our attainment and sustainment department. And if you don't mind, I'd like to take that for the record and take that to them.
Okay, make sure we get back. Okay, good.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We're on that with you. We'll have our staffs draft up that question and get that answered, Mr. Ritzelsberger. So next is Mr. Carter and then Ms. Bustos.
Okay.
Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. CS Justice is the Undersecretary. I'm a big supporter of the great work of the Army Futures Command. I think they do a wonderful job. Texas was chosen. Voices going in and out, pardon me. Texas was chosen, the Futures Command, because of our tech industry that surrounds Austin. One of the things they wanted to make sure they could do is compete with the private sector and academia for the people that we need and sustain owning those people. And as you well know, in the area of tech, those people are very mobile, very, very mobile. Have we learned anything through the Futures Command that may be of assistance to all of the other commands and to recruit and sustain and retain top talent in STEM in the fields that we need for the future fight we're looking at? And if not, what do you suggest we do to make better decisions about retention and recruitment of this talent as we compete with one of our most competitive industries?
Well, thank you, Congressman, for that question. As you know, we are here at the Department of Defense. We are competing for talent not only against other federal departments and federal agencies, but also the private sector out there, and it is fierce competition. So we are doing everything that we can to go and to really to do what we can to recruit these individuals. We have scholarship programs, we have fellowship programs that enable us to go out there and get these individuals while they're in college. Right now, currently, we have the SMART program, which allows us to go out and I think there's currently 400 members in this program that allows us to pay for their college education. And then in doing so, they owe the Department of Defense some time in service as civilians. But over 70% of those individuals that participated in this program have stayed throughout its history. So that is a program that has worked for us. We provide, we have the SEED program, which provides PhD, those that just recently received their PhD program, a grant so that they can go out and do research for the Department of Defense. These are programs that we have, and there's other programs like that. There's the Bourne Scholarships, which deals with languages, that allows us to go out and pay for tuition for individuals going out to learn a language, that allows them to go study abroad and learn a language. In doing so, they have to come back and they owe the Department of Defense a year of service, but most of them as well end up staying longer than their commitment that they owe the government. Recruiting is something that I believe is very important that we need to go out there and do. We need to be, my first month that I was here, I participated in a roundtable with college presidents talking about this very issue, about how we can work with them to let them know and to let their student body know about the jobs that we have here within the Department of Defense. And, I've taken it upon myself that we need to go into places where traditionally we haven't gone to recruit. A lot like in Texas, I believe University of Texas, El Paso is a great example of a university there. You have many of our state schools in California as well, where I come from, and throughout the country that are, the minority serving institutions, Hispanic serving institutions, historical Black colleges, universities. These are all areas where we can go and we can recruit and bring that talent into the Department of Defense. With that, I'll turn it over to the Undersecretary of the Army here to kind of talk about the Futures Command that you mentioned as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Congressman. So the Army has developed really a human capital strategy that's focused on the acquisition, development, employment, and retention of talent. And so moving that acquisition, for example, as far left as possible, we're particularly excited about the changes we've made to our junior ROTC programs. We've introduced 8 learning modules on cyber learning modules. We've introduced robotics. We've introduced these high school students to AI technologies. In our senior ROTC program, we've enabled summer intern programs that includes a wide range of both private sector learning institutions, such as MIT, Lincoln Laboratories. It includes Army organizations and joint organizations, Army Cyber Command and Cybercom. And then on the civilian side, we've just implemented, in addition to our intern programs and our fellows programs, we've just implemented a STEM scholarship program. We'll hire 1,000 students over the next 5 years, offset their tuition costs, pay their book costs, require them to work 600 hours to gain some skills during their university career. And then on the back end, they owe the Department of the Army 4 years of service as civilians. And so we believe that early acquisition focused on STEM and cyber is critical. On the recruiting side, much like Secretary Cisneros laid out, we've also implemented an urban access initiative. We've identified 22 metro areas. We are targeting, in particular, the identification of ROTC candidates from Black and Hispanic groups for ROTC scholarships. And then the last one, we've done an Army-wide engagement strategy, really to target those areas of skills where we don't habitually get into, and that is secondary and post-secondary outreach, HBCUs, and minority serving institutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bustos?
All right. Thank you very much, Chair McCollum, and also want to thank Ranking Member Calvert for holding this hearing. I also want to thank our witnesses for your service and for your leadership. To start, this hearing really hits close to home for me. The Rock Island Arsenal, and my colleagues have heard me talk about this a lot, but it's an island in the middle of the Mississippi River between the states of Iowa and Illinois. And it's in the district that I'm very proud to represent. So the Arsenal hosts many, many important functions, including the Joint Manufacturing Technology Center and the Army's Advanced and Additive Manufacturing Center of Excellence. They're doing very, very important work to support the warfighter and sustain the Army. They're also on the leading edge of manufacturing capabilities that will provide the disruptive technology needed to deter near-peer competition and aggression. However, I'm concerned about resiliency of the organic industrial base and its workforce. So let me get to my question. Arsenals are a unique component of the organic industrial base. Unlike depots, they don't have a sustained or predictable workload. And it's challenging for them to predict the medium and the long-term workforce needs. You've got these boom and bust cycles that create high work rate costs, and it makes it difficult to retain skilled workers. And I am deeply concerned about the recent layoffs of more than 100 term employees at the Rock Island Arsenal, in large part due to significant shifts in anticipated workload in the coming years. So I understand that we have the make or buy guidance, but how can we improve planning and execution for more clear workflow predictability at arsenals? And I'd certainly appreciate input from any of you, but I am particularly interested in the Army and the DoD perspectives.
Ma'am, with that, we'll turn over to the Undersecretary of the Army, Mr. Lohman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Bustos. So as you know, Rock Island Arsenal is critical to the Army's organic industrial base. In addition to the 3 arsenals, the ammo plants, and our 5 maintenance depots, it constitutes really the leading edge of what manufacturing will look like in the future. Things like additive manufacturing, 3D printing. So the Army has just embarked upon a strategic development process that will be completed by the spring of next year, which will lay out over a 15-year period what the organic industrial base modernization requirements will look like. That coupled with the supply chain and the supply chain constraints we have now, linking those two things together, what capabilities do we need to support multi-domain capable Army and joint force in the future in terms of manufacturing capability? What workforce skills are required to support that capability? And then linking our supply chain constraints as a means to predict future workload, I think are the 3 components that will normalize workload and the predictability of workload in the future as we focus to utilize the industrial base capabilities that we've inserted into each one of those organizations, Rock Island in particular. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on this?
Ma'am, I'll just let you know that, we are working as far as our workforce, thinking about the workforce of the future. We are thinking about this and really how to right size these areas so that we don't have those, problems, that we can stabilize the workforce at various locations throughout the country and around the world for our Department of Defense, and really kind of narrowing down and how to really, like I said, right size it, but also to really broaden their skill sets so that if something does happen, we can allow them to do other things and move them into a different field where they'll be able to support the Department of Defense.
So we've just got a little less than a minute left, but let me take part of that answer that you offered about workforce development and drill down a little bit. I'm a little concerned in our region about the workforce needs at the Arsenal and how those are conveyed to our surrounding community, our local colleges, and how the DoD can ensure that there's the best communication and understanding of what the workforce needs with the larger community. If you could address that, please.
No, ma'am, I think that's, you're right on there. And I think that's something that, as far as the Department of Defense goes, we need to do better of promoting ourselves and promoting the jobs and the skill sets that we need at the various areas where we are, where we need employees. And that is something that I am committed to and will continue to work on while I'm here.
Okay, very good. With that, I'm out of town. Madam Chair, thank you very much, and I yield back.
Thank you. So I think that was very enlightening what you talked about, you know, the switch on and off for employees with not having, you know, a dependent upon workforce. We hear that from small businesses, and we hear that from medium-sized businesses as well, the way the department sometimes even orders supplies. It's a switch on, switch off, and it doesn't have the smooth sustainability that families and businesses sometimes need, and our communities need, to feel, you know, confident that there's going to be economic success for everyone at the end. Ms. Capter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very interesting hearing. Sorry we were interrupted by votes. Great to see our colleague, Undersecretary Cisneros. Really glad to have you there. I wanted to ask a question that I sort of hinted at in the last round, and that is, if you live in a place with a big defense base, chances are that the government of the United States will touch your life in some way. You own a pizza shop, or you go to a religious institution or whatever. But if you don't have a big defense base, all this we're talking about is rather remote and very far away. And so one of the questions I have is, for those elements of the military that do exist, and in my region, those are largely reserve and guard. If we're talking about inspiring a new generation, what can the Department of Defense do annually, rather than just bring the Thunderbirds, okay, wherever hundreds of thousands of people gather to see them fly over? In terms of inspiring,
Ms. Capter, your sound is cut out. It's still out. There you go.
What can the military do to provide an annual event, bridging across all these different programs that exist here, there, everywhere? You got me all confused now. That are relevant locally as an inspiration to the youngest generation from age 7 up. So they start thinking about what they might do. So for example, in my region, we have guard mechanics and civilian mechanics repairing F-16 engines. I guarantee you, you let some of these kids see that, they're going to start getting interested. Maybe if there's a little handout sheet you can give them as they walk out the door. If you have people who are in a control tower and they are directing airplanes, there are young people that will be attracted to that at a very young age. If you wait till high school, it's almost too late. Maybe in junior high. But I'm asking the Department of Defense to think big about assets you already have out there, and to do convenings with the local boards of education and educational programs that are trying to help young people move into these fields that are so needed. We don't have anything like that in my region. Maybe the Marine Corps does it in North Carolina, or Ken Calvert, you got 1,000 different defense, 29 palms and everything out there. Is it 29 or 27, whatever it is? And, we don't have anything like that. So the opportunity to think about your future doesn't come from the Department of Defense. Can you think about putting something together that would be remarkable, that would make it to places like Northern Ohio, where we have huge recruitment levels, okay, because of the bad economy, but we really don't inspire very much in terms of education in the ladder up that you're talking about. What might you do there?
Well, Representative Capter, thank you for the question, and it is good to see you again. And the Thunderbirds are great, and I'm sure the Navy would say the Blue Angels, and the Army would say the Golden Knights are just as great. And whatever we can do to get them across America, I know they're working hard to do that for recruiting purposes. But I think you're right. I think there is a generation out there, and it is getting harder. And those people that can actually join the military serve in uniform right now, I believe only 25% are actually qualified to do that. Less than 1% actually does serve in uniform currently right now. There is, we need to kind of get out there and to really promote and let people know that the Department of Defense, the United States military, no matter what branch, one of our 5 branches that you decide to serve in is, a viable way to get out there, and it could be a viable career. I always talked about how it changed my life. I joined the Navy when I was 18 years old, and it gave me pretty much led me through my course of education. All the education I have today is because of the United States Navy and my service. And that,
To add, if I might,
yeah.
thinking about it, we have a local board of education that started an airplane repair program in one of our high schools. And it is oversubscribed. They're coming from other states to get into this high school program. And imagine if the mechanics out at the F-16 unit were to invite mechanics from the area and programs from the area. I think another area also is our disabled vets, like in AI. I have a guy in my district, 20-year veteran from the Air Force, unfortunately injured, but a wizard on the computer. I think you ought to take a look at that set of people and see if we can't bring some of them into some of these, I would say, desk jobs, if they can't do the physical work as in the past. So I just put that on the table for consideration, and my time has expired. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we don't, Mr. Calvert, I don't see any other members joining us. I have a few things I'm going to say in closing. Is there anything that you would like to say in closing before I finish and adjourn the meeting?
Well, I just wanted to emphasize, obviously, education, and we need to, as the prior panel, as we bring on newer workforce, especially in STEM education, which has been brought up a number of times, because it's going to be technology that's going to make, or it's going to create efficiencies, as it already is in the private sector. And so whether it's artificial intelligence to do substantial assessment work and the rest. And so I'm looking forward to working with the secretaries to find ways to be effective, efficient, and have a manageable workforce. I make point out, Madam Chair, I have a number of 2-stars that always tell me that there's papers floating around the Pentagon looking for signatures all the time. I mean, it's just, I get it. I was in business for a long time, and you're in that, everybody's got to initial off on something or other, and it's sometimes a larger bureaucracy creates more problems than obviously solving it. So I don't want to harp on it, but that's where I'm at. So thank you.
They must have been listening to you, because in 2001, military to civilian, this is for the Army, was 4 to 7, and now it's 1 to 4. So I guess you could say maybe for some of the things that you've been working on, there a few people are trending in the right direction. So, but we'll get those statistics for you.
Thank you.
As I close this up, when I had asked earlier about what the services were doing, only the Air Force responded. So we're going to follow up asking the Army and Navy on that too. And I noticed everybody talked about ROTC, and that's great. We have some wonderful ROTC programs in Minnesota, and they are reaching out to minority and disadvantaged youth, and to give kids some great experiences. But ROTC in and of itself isn't a program unless it's designed specifically to do so, to fill the gaps, to look at some of the things we're looking forward in our workforce. And it also doesn't do anything about addressing those men and women who come in and serve, as Mr. Cineros pointed out he did when he was 18. And have those young men and women see a career ladder for training and opportunity and career development, both in the Department of Defense, in a branch of the service, and moving forward. So I know that that's one of the big things that you're working on, sir, on how to do that. We want to be a partner in that. So when I was asking about funding And I'm not picking on the Air Force at all, because I thank her for her response. She said, well, we might have to look at cutting some other place to beef up ROTC. My question on working with the committee bipartisanly on this is, if we put more money into workforce development, let's say we put some into ROTC too. Let's say that's one of the pots we look at. We want to put funds in there in a way that is dog-eared. So it's going there so we can track its effectiveness along with you. We want to be a partner with you in this. And that's why I was asking, if you're going to need resources, are you going to dog-ear the resources to make sure that they stay where they are? Or do we need to put lines in it? Because you served in Congress. That sometimes when we dispose of funding, if we don't dispose of it carefully, somebody else will have a better idea for it. And you're going to go, you're our future for, our national defense workforce to keep America safe, strong, and secure. And also safe, strong, and secure as people leave the military and go into the private sector workforce. And so we want to make sure that when we put tools in the toolbox, that they're your tools. So we'll follow up a little more on that as we get into next year's budget. We're also going to follow up, sir, on some more information on what's going on with SMART Scholarship Program, what's going on with the industrial base analysis sustainment with, because some of that's in your wheelhouse and some of it isn't, but it's all interconnected. And I just wanted you to know we're going to be following up with some of the other folks too. And then the manufacturing technology program. That came up with the other panel as well. They said some of these programs work really well. Some could, be an improvement. Basically, what we heard from the first panel is this needs to be a whole of government approach, a whole of community approach, a whole of nation approach. And so there's a lot of work for everybody to do on this. We're going to need everybody being creative and thinking about how to achieve this gap, because in a democracy, we give people choices. In an autocracy, sometimes a child never gets a choice what they're going to be when they grow up. So we want to make sure that they choose in a way that advances not only our values, but advances. So with that, I want to thank you all for participating today. I want to thank all of you for your patience. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.